Hi Katie, this is Tony. I'm doing your critique for the landscape photos. So I'm looking at your first shot here of the trees. So a nice shot, like the composition where you have these two trees on either side framing this group of other trees here. I guess the one thing that I would look at in terms of this is maybe you set your ISO at a little bit, maybe like 100 or 200, and it being a little bit on the low side. It looks like the tree branches kind of moved here. Um, I'm always looking for, this type of thing for it to be kind of nice and sharp, so you might want to pay attention to that. This is also one of those things too where as you're looking at this picture, the original image might have been a little darker than what it actually looks like here, because this is like one of those things where the camera's meter can be fooled, and since you've done the exposure compensation on this on the other pictures that I'd seen further down in your group of photos, this might also be a great candidate for using a little bit of the minus exposure compensation to darken it down to a value that might give it a little bit more snap, a little bit more contrast. But otherwise, works out very nice. Okay, we'll go down to the next one here. I like this one because it has a little bit of a shallow depth of field, and of course the flower being really nice and sharp, and the other plants and things in the background being softer, which really makes your eye be directed right to this. It also helps that the flower is of a really bright value, and so and a lot of times in photos, your eye is always first drawn to the brightest part of the picture, and also pick the parts of the picture that are sharp too. And in terms of composition, very nice in terms of the fact that you put it down to the lower left-hand side of the photo, which adds kind of a nice dramatic feel to the image and to the composition. Okay, we'll go down to the next one. And this is nice, but as I'm looking at the, I'm looking at the barn back there, trying to decide, of what's the most important part of this picture. I like how you framed the barn back there with the two trees on either side. As I'm looking at that, though, I think that in terms of the exposure, I think I probably would have had the barn be a little bit darker. In terms of the interest of this picture right now, it looks like you're emphasizing the leaves, especially since the barn is a little bit out of the depth of field there. And the leaves are nice and sharp. It's just kind of like a picky thing for me. But as I'm looking at this image, compositionally, it's nice that you framed the barn with the trees. But I think since you framed the barn, that the barn is really what you want to show off, and so you can see how the exposure here is a little bit overexposed. And so I think I would have done a minus, like maybe a -1 or maybe -1.3 in the exposure compensation to be able to bring the light value of this down a little bit lower, and then let the trees go a little bit darker. But interesting composition. Now this next one, okay, so this one's a horizontal shot. I like this a lot in terms of the composition, the rule of thirds, where you split a picture into essentially 3 pieces, and in terms of where the intersecting lines are, which would be like right about here, and maybe like right about here, and right about here, and then right about here. This falls right in with that, and really adds a nice kind of drama to the picture, being off center like that. If you have access to Photoshop, I think what I would do is make all these green, the green leaves and everything a little bit darker, and make this, just keep this right, the value where this is right here, but to really draw your eye to this area of the flower, to really make that pop. I probably would have opened up my aperture maybe a little bit more, so I have a little bit less depth of field back there. But I mean, that's just a minor detail. But otherwise, very nice in terms of the composition. And if you could just darken it down a little bit, that would really make that little flower pop there. This next one, always tough when you're shooting in the shadows like this with, because you got a combination of sunlight and shadows. And as I'm looking at this, I'm thinking maybe it needs to be just warmed up just a little bit, in terms of color. But I do like these interesting shapes. And once again, you put this little area, this flower right here, right in that area, right where the rule of thirds is, so your eye pretty much goes right here. I am a little bit distracted with this, but that's just a real minor thing. I probably would have burned, if you have access to Photoshop, I probably would have burned and darkened this down a little bit, but kept this, area looking as light as I could without making it look too over Photoshopped. But I do like the fact that this is sharper and this is a little bit softer, and if you had a way to open up your lens and make the depth of field a little bit more shallow, to emphasize this, that would have been really nice. This is beautiful. This is a gorgeous shot. This is fantastic. Love this shot. Yeah, I love everything about this shot. This is, I don't have any kind of criticism of this. This is just a beautiful look to these flowers, and you maybe could have knocked it down this or burned just the top edge just to kind of keep your eye right in here. But I mean, that's just a very minor thing. But just overall, this is a beautiful, beautiful shot. And I love the very shallow depth of field. And you can see back here, these flowers being softer really, really draw your eye up to these sharper ones here. And the lighting is just gorgeous, just beautiful. Just love that kind of backlit look to it. Let's see. Somehow we jumped off of your pictures here. Let's see if we can get back to your pictures here. There we go. Blackboard is acting a little bit funny here. Let's see if we get back down to your pictures. I noticed that you had, let's see. So aside from this really nice, beautiful shot, I noticed that then you then had the exposure compensation shot. So very nice that you put these in here. Oh, very interesting look to the top of this, to these pictures with the +2 exposure compensation, and then this one looks more like 0 for exposure compensation, and then the -2. And very nice to show me that you have the ability to be able to go in there and do the exposure compensation. So definitely when you're working with some of those pictures, especially when you're working with green plants, like you were working with some of those, you might want to try doing a little minus exposure compensation to kind of bring those values down. So it's definitely a little exercise for you to be aware that that exposure compensation could definitely be your friend in terms of getting good exposures for your shots. Okay, good job, and thanks very much.